In 1939, as war consumed Europe, Great Britain stood alone, a vulnerable island nation, bracing for an inevitable attack from the sky. Across the Channel, the German Luftwaffe, the most powerful air force in the world, was preparing for the final knockout blow. Britain's defenses were dangerously obsolete, relying on acoustic mirrors, giant concrete dishes that were supposed to hear approaching enemy planes. In cities across the country, civilians prepared for the inevitable. They had no way of knowing when or where the bombers would strike. The task fell to a small group of scientists led by a man named Robert Watson Watt, who had a radical idea. The government was searching for a death ray to shoot down planes. Watson Watt told them it was impossible, but he could detect them. In 1935, they conducted a secret test, bouncing radio waves from a BBC transmitter, often approaching RAF bomber. Inside the van, they watched a screen, and for the first time in history, they saw a blip, the unmistakable echo of an aircraft. The plan was approved. A top-secret chain of radio stations would be built, covering the entire southern and eastern coast of Britain, from Scotland to Cornwall. These were the chain home transmitters, giant 350-foot tall steel towers, designed to flood the skies with a constant pulse of radio waves. Thousands of engineers and laborers worked in total secrecy, racing against time to build the network before the inevitable invasion began. Beside the giant transmitters, they built 240-foot wooden towers, the receivers that were designed to catch the faint echoes bouncing back. But the towers only provided raw, confusing data. It was a storm of static and false echoes from clouds, birds, and even the sea itself. The solution was the filter room, a top-secret nerve center staffed almost entirely by women from the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, or WAAF. These women acted like a human computer, filtering out the false echoes and plotting the true speed, direction, and altitude of the enemy raids. After comparing reports, a senior filterer would make the critical decision, confirming the track was hostile and sending the final warning to the operations room. This filtered information was sent to the heart of the defense, the sector operations room, a secret bunker, often deep underground. Here, WAAF operators, using long wooden rakes, moved colored blocks across the giant map table, tracking every single enemy move in real time. Information was constantly updated on a giant tote board, showing the status of every British squadron, who was refueling, and who was ready to fight. Sitting in a gallery above, the controller watched the entire battle unfold, able to see exactly where to send his fighters for the perfect intercept. The Battle of Britain begins. Waves of German bombers, the Luftwaffe, fly over the English Channel, confident they will meet no resistance. But thanks to radar, the operations room sees them coming. WAAF operators begin tracking Hostile 2-0 the second it leaves the French coast. Long before the bombers reached land, the order was given: scramble! British Spitfire squadrons were already taking off to meet them. Guided by the operations room, the Spitfires climbed above the bombers, using the sun at their backs, waiting for the perfect moment to dive. The British fighters dove down, their attacks perfectly timed. The German bombers, flying blind, had no idea what hit them until it was too late. For the German pilots, it was chaos. The British always seemed to know exactly where they were. It felt like a trap they couldn't avoid. Day after day, the Luftwaffe bombers were met by a perfectly placed wall of British fighters. Their missions failed, and their losses were devastating. While the British pilots, guided by the invisible shield, could engage the enemy, score victories, and return to base safely to refuel and fight again. Frustrated, the German High Command launched Adlertag, Eagle Day, a massive all-out assault designed to destroy the Royal Air Force in a single blow. On September 15, 1940, the largest formation yet assembled blackened the skies. This was the battle's climax. Everything was at stake. But the operations room saw them all. The map table flooded with red blocks. The controller calmly gave the order to scramble all available squadrons. For the first time, the British Big Wing, a massive formation of fighters, was vectored perfectly by radar to meet the attack head-on. The British Big Wing tore into the German formations. The German pilots, who expected an easy fight, were met by a perfectly coordinated wall of fighters. The Germans suffered devastating losses they could not replace. The Luftwaffe High Command realized the Royal Air Force could not be broken. Hitler was forced to postpone Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, indefinitely. It was his first major defeat of the war. The Battle of Britain was won, thanks to the pilots. But the victory was secured by the scientists, the WAF operators, and the invisible shield that guarded the coast. The Germans knew the British had some kind of detection system, but they didn't understand it. Their attempts to jam the signal were clumsy and completely ineffective. Before the war, the Germans even sent a Zeppelin spy ship to investigate the towers, but they misunderstood the radio frequency and concluded the towers were just for naval communication. Unable to see their real targets, the airfields, because of the British fighters, German bombers eventually made a critical error. They started bombing London. The Germans never realized how vital the radar towers were. They failed to destroy the invisible shield, and that failure cost them the battle. The technology was soon made smaller, creating airborne radar, which hunted and destroyed U-boats in the Atlantic. The Germans were stunned. They scrambled to build their own radar. But they were already years behind in the electronic war. The secret of 1940 became our modern world. Every time you fly, you are guided by the descendant of that invisible shield. The true legacy belongs to the WAF operators, the human computers who turned chaotic echoes into a clear picture and saved their nation. But the war wasn't over. Hitler, furious, changed his tactic and began the Blitz, the terrifying night bombing of London. The chain-home radar was useless at night. It could warn of a raid, but it couldn't guide British fighters in the pitch black. A new system was needed. Britain developed GCI, or Ground Control Intercept, a new type of radar that could track both friend and foe. This GCI data was fed directly to new night fighter planes, equipped with their own secret onboard radar nicknamed Cat's Eyes. Deep in the GCI bunker, the operator could now see both the German bomber and her own British fighter on the same screen. She became the pilot's eyes, calmly radioing directions. Vector 120, target closing, 10 degrees starboard. In the cockpit, the pilot followed her voice until his own onboard radar picked up the target. The bomber was now blind, and he was not. The night fighters could now see in the dark. The Blitz was broken. London was finally safe thanks to the unseen shield. But the war was far from over. In the Atlantic, German U-boats were sinking ships faster than they could be built. The invisible shield was taken to sea. British warships were equipped with new, powerful naval radar. Now in the dead of night, they could see the surface U-boats, miles away, long before the U-boats saw them. Radar turned the hunters into the hunted. The U-boat wolf packs were systematically destroyed, and the Atlantic lifeline was saved. The Germans had their own secret weapon, a radio navigation system called Nickebeam, Kink Leg. It used two radio beams. The bomber flew along one beam, and when he heard the second beam cross it, he dropped his bombs. But a brilliant British scientist, R.V. Jones, detected these secret beams, and he figured out exactly what they were for. Britain's response was genius. They didn't jam the beam, they bent it. They transmitted their own signal, tricking the German pilots. The German pilots, blindly trusting their radio, were now being secretly guided by the British, miles away from their real target. Believing they were over their target, the bombers released their entire payload over empty, open countryside, hitting nothing. The pilots returned to base, reporting target destroyed, while in reality, the British factory was completely untouched. Soon the British stopped bending the beams and just jammed them with a deafening noise, giving the German pilots severe headaches. Radar's greatest test came on D-Day, guiding the largest invasion fleet in history, 5,000 ships, across the channel in total darkness. On every lead ship, naval radar operators watched their screens, navigating the fleet perfectly through the darkness to the correct beaches. But radar was also used for deception. RAF planes dropped window, millions of aluminum strips, over Pas-de-Calais. This window created a massive ghost fleet on German radar screens, tricking them into believing the real invasion was in the wrong place. On D-Day, radar's role wasn't just defense, it was offense. It had to guide thousands of bombers to their targets in total darkness. They used a new high-precision radar navigation system called G. It allowed bombers to know their exact location over enemy territory. Guided by G, Pathfinder aircraft flew in first, dropping colored flares to perfectly mark the targets for the main bomber force. This electronic precision was devastating. The D-Day bombers accurately destroyed key German defenses, paving the way for the invasion. But the war wasn't over. Hitler unleashed his V1 vengeance weapons, terrifying flying bombs that struck London day and night. But by now, British radar was so advanced, they linked it directly to their anti-aircraft guns, creating radar-guided weaponry. These new guns could see and shoot the fast-moving V1s in the dark, creating a new shield that saved London from destruction. The invisible shield crossed into Germany, using portable radar to guide Allied forces across rivers, even in thick fog or total darkness. But as the war raged in Europe, a new threat was rising in the east. Japan's powerful navy secretly prepared for a devastating attack. America had radar at Pearl Harbor. A new experimental unit was stationed at Opana Point, high on a hill. At 7:02 a.m., the operator saw an enormous blip, the largest he had ever seen. He reported it, but was told, "Don't worry about it." Minutes later, the attack began. The blip was 183 Japanese planes. Radar had worked, but the warning was ignored. Pearl Harbor was a catastrophic failure, but it taught the U.S. Navy a vital lesson. Trust the radar no matter what. America raced to equip every ship in its new fleet with the most advanced radar technology in the world. They copied the British system, creating the CIC, Combat Information Center, a dark room where radar operators could see everything. At the Battle of Guadalcanal, U.S. radar-guided ships ambushed the Japanese fleet in total darkness, achieving a devastating revenge for Pearl Harbor. But the electronic war was an arms race. The Germans, learning from the British, developed their own advanced airborne radar. German night fighter pilots now had their own cat's eyes, allowing them to hunt Allied bombers in the dark skies over Germany. But the Allies had another trick. They dropped window, millions of aluminum strips that blinded the new German radar. On German radar screens, a few bombers suddenly looked like 1,000. The invisible shield had become an invisible sword. Radar guided the final Allied push, helping tanks navigate and target even through the smoke and ruins of Germany. In the Pacific, radar led U.S. forces to the final, decisive naval battles, pinpointing even lone enemy ships from hundreds of miles away. Even the atomic missions relied on radar, using special bombing radars to find their targets through clouds and darkness. When the war finally ended, the frantic plotting stopped. The operations rooms fell silent, their vital mission complete. For decades after the war, the full story of radar remained top secret, its true impact hidden from the world. The brilliant work of the wartime scientists paved the way for decades of innovation in electronics and computing. And the crucial role of the WAF operators is now finally recognized. The women who were the eyes and ears of Britain's defense. A few of the giant steel towers still stand today, silent monuments to the secret weapon that saved a nation. Radar's echoes are now everywhere, guiding ships, predicting weather, landing planes, and even parking our cars. It was born in secrecy, built against impossible odds, an invisible shield forged from radio waves. Without it, the Battle of Britain might have been lost. The invasion might have succeeded. The course of history changed forever. The invisible shield that ensured Britain and freedom would survive.